Hi folks, it's Dave from 12 Hats Radio here, and today we've got Jason Crighton from Conserve, Conversation Unfiltered podcast and Conserve the Wild over from Pennsylvania in the States. And welcome to the show, Jason.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Dave. I really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure's all mine. Now, can you explain to my listeners the role, actually, first of all, can you tell us about Conserve the Wild and what?
So Conserve the Wild is a concept that myself and a couple friends sort of developed over the last couple years. And we are basically an aspiring and going through the process right now to obtain nonprofit status with the IRS to become a conservation-based organization. Our main goal is to combat and limit the impacts of urban sprawl that we're
Okay.
facing, especially on the eastern seaboard in the United States.
And can you enlighten our listeners about your podcast?
Yeah, so one of basically with Conserve the Wild, what we're trying to do, the two main things, is, try to combat that urban sprawl. But then the other thing is education and outreach efforts as well. I'm a teacher by trade, so I have a very strong background and need to want to educate people on things that I think are important. So we, my co-host and I, sometime co-host and I, started the Conservation Unfiltered podcast as a means of education and outreach. We are by no means the experts. We try to get experts on in the conservation and wildlife space so that we can broadcast their message and their information to anyone who's willing to listen.
Well, actually, I'm starting to listen myself. I actually listened to your latest one last night, but that lady over in Montana, she sounds like a tough old bird, actually.
Yeah. It's crazy. I'm all about getting outdoors. I'm an avid hunter. I consider myself a very big conservationist. We're in the middle of the COVID-19 outbreak in America right now. I'm off. I've been off work for a week. My wife's been off work for a week, and we went to our property, family property up north, where we have a cabin, and we did a lot of hiking outside and all that kind of stuff. But so I'm all about disconnecting from technology as much as
Yeah.
possible. But with that episode in particular, technology is the only reason why I even know who Lindsay was. We connected via Twitter a couple years ago and
Okay.
have really kept in contact. And then all of a sudden she went dark for about a month and a half. And it was weird because she puts a lot of content out on her own channels and her own pages. And then all of a sudden she came back and we found out the reason why was because she was on the History Channel show Alone the Beast. And she's doing things out west in Montana that and on that TV show that I can't even imagine doing myself. She's definitely more badass than I could ever dream to be.
Yeah. Now, you also talk about, like, on your website as well, about ethical hunting. So can you explain to my listeners the role that ethical hunting plays in conservation?
Yeah. So basically, as soon as man came on this earth doing the things that we do, we have altered the landscape that animals also live in, right? So with that, we have to manage their population. We really can't just let nature take its course, as much as honestly, that would probably be the best thing to do. At least philosophically would be the best thing to do. However, in America, one of the biggest issues we have are white-tailed deer. We are just overrun, especially in areas of higher populations of just a ton of white-tailed deer. Because they're so adaptable. Unfortunately, they're so adaptable that they actually start eating themselves out of house and home. And then you end up with just a really poor population. There's just too many deer for a small amount of food that's available. So the ethical hunter, just basically advised by all the state laws, regulations, sort of has that moral compass where they're being part of the management solution so that we don't have too many deer on the landscape that end up dying of disease and starvation.
Yeah, actually, that sounds a lot like how we're managing crocodiles up north. because there's just getting too many, especially around Darwin. So we have to start to cull them because we banned hunting in the 70s, and now it's just because they're getting into the urban area, it's just becoming a bit of a problem. So yeah, I think I totally dig that. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of. I mentioned white-tailed deer just because it's by far the most hunted and most easily recognizable big game species we have in America, and we now have we have urban areas where hunting has not been allowed for years,
Mm.
and we're at the point now where the elected officials there, county commissioners, are making decisions basically either to allow a limited amount of hunting, or if there's enough public uproar and that's not allowed, then they bring in quote unquote sharpshooters
Yeah.
that will call the population, just like you're talking about, to try to keep them in check, because deer are eating foods that they normally wouldn't eat, vegetation they normally wouldn't eat, because there's just nothing else for them to eat.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to go a very deep philosophical question here. Do you think mankind has lost touch with nature?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. We have technology that is a wonderful thing, but as we rely on it more and more day by day, year by year, uh, honestly, we're starting to get to the point where it's almost like we're getting to the movie Wall-E, that Disney movie where they're in a spaceship and the Earth is inhabitable. The Industrial Revolution really spawned that, and then the technological revolution really kicked it into high gear. We have very few people that realize the good that being outside and among nature, uh, what kind of positives that can provide a person.
Yeah. And being a non-profit, do you see a huge role in non-profit startups playing in the future?
Yeah, I think so. I think technically I am a millennial. I don't like to I don't like to put myself in that category, but technically I am, and I honestly see with a lot of my students, they have a great need to be a part of something, and
Right.
if what they want to be a part of doesn't exist, they're starting their own atmosphere for that. And I feel like I'm a big example of that. We in America have countless conservation organizations, but there are none that are doing what we're seeking to do. So we
Okay.
decided, hey, let's start our own. Let's do what we want to do. Make sure the funds that we get go into the area that we want them to go. And I foresee that continuing in all manners of nonprofit, at least in America.
And do you have any? Is there any failures on your startup journey you had, and what lessons did you learn from
Oh, yeah, there's been a ton of failures.
them?
um, to try to keep it sort of short and simple is that probably the biggest failure was trying to go too big too soon.
Mm.
Um, I had a I had a list of people that I wanted to. I'm sort of the main person for this and the main spearhead. I had a list of people that I wanted to get involved, and I got probably 20 people involved right off the start. And what I found was that of those 20 people, about four of them really had the same vision that I had. And these other people were trying to pull us in other directions that I felt like were the wrong direction. So I have really learned from that experience that the people that I pull in need to understand the ultimate vision of what our nonprofit is trying to accomplish, and to make sure that they're going to be rowing the boat in the same direction, so to speak.
Okay. And what is driving your curiosity right now?
Whew. About my nonprofit, or just in general? How
Just in general.
philosophical are you getting? In general,
In general, yeah.
driving my curiosity would be what drives people to what drives high driven people to do what they are seeking out to do.
Right.
What steps they're taking to make their vision possible. I feel like if I can learn from what drives them and how they're taking what drives them and putting that into action, hopefully that can sort of help drive our nonprofit in the direction that I'm hoping it goes towards.
Okay. And finally, on a lighter note, can you share some light-hearted stories and experiences that you can share with us about your entrepreneurial journey or conservation in general?
Um, yeah. So just recently, a couple weeks ago, right before we had our little, we had this sort of lockdown start happening in this area. I gave a talk at a local church for an outdoorsman event. I wasn't given a whole lot of information other than it's an outdoorsman event and talk about whatever you want. You have 10 minutes. So I went into it just like I would teaching, and really, as it turns out, really over prepare. But in the talk, I talked about the fact that the number of hunters are dropping in North America, and that really current hunters are the ones that can help stem that tide by inviting other people hunting with them. Uh, when in that talk, I mentioned that the boomers are the people that have really let us down because they're aging out. I also use terms like hipsters, and with the group that I was giving this talk to, which I sort of knew. I knew that those terms might go over their heads and or sort of turn them off a little bit. And it did at first, until I was able to sort of bring it around and sort of help them out. See the point that I was trying to make. So the couple of jokes about millennials and hipsters and boomers that I threw in there was a little too young for the crowd, so I didn't have to pause very long for those laugh breaks.
Yeah, it's a funny thing with hipsters. I mean, they look like lumberjacks, but they don't really do much, do they?
Yeah, we so for Conserve the Wild, we have sort of adopted the buffalo plaid, lumberjack plaid shirt as sort of like our uniform whenever we're out in public doing our events. And so we went to this event, and this was sort of the first big one where we were really going to be seen, and we really went hard with that uniform. And we were not as unique as I thought we would be. There was myself and my wife who's helping me out with the nonprofit in this buffalo plaid, and then about 20 other people in buffalo plaid as well. So we did not stand out nearly as
Uh,
much as we thought we would.
well, thanks for coming on to the show. And
I appreciate it. Thank you for the offer.
no worries at all. And